We are watching for the development of potentially two more systems in the Atlantic as we move forward over the next few days. What's going on, guys? I'm certified meteorologist Jonathan Kegges. In this video, we're going to talk about a subtropical storm that could get going near the coast of Florida later this weekend, and then a new tropical depression. This one could develop as early as the end of the week, possibly the weekend. That one's closer to Africa. Really hasn't moved off the coast just yet, but it will soon. Nigel, again, we talked about this. It's not a threat, but I do want to show you this. It's a really cool satellite presentation. Its eye is huge. Stick around towards the end of the video. I'll show you the latest on Nigel if you are interested in that. Here's kind of a sneak peek at its big eye. I'll show you a closer look, though, on satellite. There is Nigel. That is going up and out. Here is the yellow blob again, highlighted, put there by the National Hurricane Center off of the Florida coast. Now, this thing should not get too terribly strong, but it will bring impacts to Florida and the Carolinas. So I will show you that, even potentially the Mid-Atlantic and parts of the Northeast. And then we have this big red area right here. That is the section where our tropical depression could form by the end of this week, maybe over the weekend. I will show you the latest models on that coming up as well. I will have the time codes in the description if you want to skip ahead, although I hope you hang out with us before that. Before we get into the video, if you do want to stay updated on the rest of hurricane season, again, please hit subscribe. If you find this content helpful, give it a thumbs up. It really does help us out a lot. All right, first and foremost, here is our little thingy-majig that could develop off the coast. And again, we'll start with the wave height representation, and then I'll show you the model forecast. Really, this will be the biggest impacts for Florida and Georgia. You see anywhere from 6 to 9 foot waves here off the coast of the Carolinas, even 9 to 12 foot waves further out at sea, but really towards the outer banks. You see kind of the motion, though, of this potential system, regardless if it does take on tropical or subtropical characteristics. It does slide its way up the eastern seaboard. Again, 6 to 9 foot waves all the way off the Virginia coast, all up into the mid-Atlantic. That's Sunday morning at 3 o'clock, and we are dealing with some pretty big waves crashing in to the eastern seaboard. Here's kind of how this system comes into fruition. So we're looking at a cold front, and this is kind of what we call a homegrown system. Cold front stalled over South Florida, and what happens a lot of times, you get the circulation to develop right along the front if it stays there for a longer period of time. And watch what happens. It kind of detaches itself from the front a little bit and then begins to develop. So let me bring out my telestration again. We see it right here. Here is our closed isobar, meaning that we're starting to get a defined center. Note, though, that unlike a tropical system, we don't really have it fully involved across like a compact disk. Most of the weather, and let me get rid of my telestrations here, most of the weather is kind of displaced from the center and lifting north. This is why it is subtropical. A tropical system has all of its thunderstorms well defined around its center. Subtropical, it has its main thunderstorms displaced from the center. So that is why, again, we're looking at the potential for a subtropical storm. It's starting to take on a little bit of tropical characteristics, but again, it likely won't have enough time. You see it here, it does kind of flare up a little bit, the center, but note where all of the nastier weather is. Well far away, way far away from that center. So places like DC through the Jersey coast, again, getting those northeasterly winds, could have some coastal issues, and then some bands of very heavy rain, maybe even up to New York City, Boston again, all because of that system that is right down there. We're going to keep an eye on that. Again, it should be weak. It should be a non-issue, but when we have those waves of rain coming through, could cause some flooding issues along parts of the southeast corner of the U.S. into the mid-Atlantic, so we are going to watch that carefully. Tropical satellite, we are taking a big long trip out to Africa, and we see these waves. Still, there is the wave that we're going to talk about, but still a bunch of these tropical waves working their way off of the African coastlines. The next one up is this one here, and this one could be our next tropical depression. It is likely to become our next tropical depression. So first and foremost, we are going to break down some models for you. And we're going to start off with the European model. Here, of course, is Nigel, right smack dab in the middle of your screen. That up and out, non-issue. There is the spin that comes our way. That is that subtropical thing. Again, looks well defined by the time we get towards September 23rd or the 24th. Again, that is 3, 4, 5 days away as we work its way up the Atlantic coast. Here, though, is our little tropical depression, potentially by the 26th, a named storm at this point. Here are the things that I want to show you. A couple of things for those that are wondering if this is going to come towards the U.S. I'm maybe slightly more concerned about the Caribbean, just slightly. I still think this is going up and out before we get to the Caribbean. Of course, here we are right here. But I just want you guys to be a little more on guard in the northeast corner of the Caribbean. Still, though, I'm optimistic of a way out. And here is why. We have area of high pressure right here. We have another area of high pressure right here. And that is characterized by the clockwise flow, the clockwise airflow of high pressure. Right in the middle there, that is the weakness between the two ridges of high pressure. So when a storm gets decently strong enough to feel that pull, look at this. There is its way up and out, and the European model likes that. Now, there's a piece of it kind of left behind that we'd have to watch there as that 7 to 10 days away. There's a lot of time to watch it. Now, here's the GFS representation of it. There's that spin rolling off. Again, it keeps it very, very broad, very unorganized through September 22nd, so maybe not even a tropical depression, still a tropical wave by the 25th. Remember, we were talking about the European by the 26th. We likely have a named storm, and there's hardly anything there. The GFS keeps this thing extremely, extremely weak. Sneak peek on Nigel. But the GFS has also had a really, really terribly tough time this year kind of picking out strengthening tropical systems and developing these tropical systems. So right now, we talked about this before in a previous video, not only in yesterday's video on the 18th, but a couple of weeks ago we were watching for we call it tropical cyclogenesis. That's the art of these things kind of coming together, the scientific nature of it. But while the GFS is having a tough time, it's really hard to kind of be trustworthy to it and believe what it's pointing out, since it has had a really rough time with developing these systems this season. So again, we're going to watch. It's a long time to watch, but I'm cautiously optimistic anyway about that thing not only having a shot to go east and go up and out around that first area of high pressure, but cold fronts are becoming a lot more prominent off the United States eastern seaboard. More opportunities for that thing to go out as well. So we're going to watch it, but there's a couple of ways that that system, if it does develop, which it likely will, stays out at sea. All right, Hurricane Nigel. Look at this thing. It's a weird-looking storm. It's a smaller storm, but it has a gigantic eye. There is the storm itself, but look at this eye that is kind of carved out. And that's what I was kind of talking about here. It's a good representation, of course. This is a hurricane, a 90-mile-per-hour hurricane per the 11 o'clock in the morning advisory. But there are all the thunderstorms around its eye wall. That is a tropical system versus that what is likely going to be ugly, still impactful thing off the coast of Florida later on. Latest on Nigel, again, expected to get to a Category 2 hurricane. You see it right there, kind of splitting the difference between Bermuda and the Azores, going up and out, and then weakening significantly once it gets out into the open waters of the cooler open waters of the North Atlantic. Look at the models, though. I always like to show these because whenever they get embedded in the steering current up there, they do some weird, funny things. Look at that. It kind of does several loop-de-loops up there towards parts of the United Kingdom and into Iceland, toward Greenland. Crazy stuff up there, but again, at that point, it would be a shell of itself. Alrighty, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you found this content helpful, please give it a thumbs up. If you do want to stay updated on the weather, not only during hurricane season, please hit subscribe. Of course, we're venturing through the rest of the peak of hurricane season. Would love it if you jump on board. Post in the comments where you're tuning in from. Hit that subscribe button. If you found this content helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and we will catch you next time.